What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Off the Top Rope, Off the Mic Sports Network. So, a big topic of discussion, obviously coming out of SummerSlam, is now we're in the home stretch of the John Cena Farewell Tour. So, a couple things, and we could probably address this at a later date when it's officially announced. It seems like his last match is shuffling between a couple potential days. I think I've seen December 13th could be a Saturday night's main event, or they could move it to the 27th, which would make it go head to head with AEW World's End. And WWE, they're not going to shy away from an opportunity to try and, shrink the competition or get all the headlines. And, there's no bigger headline than John Cena's last match. So there was a discussion on Busted Open, a show that I have worked on before, and I've worked with Bully Ray. I have a lot of respect for his opinions and, his wrestling mind in terms of what he's done for the business. The guy's a WWE Hall of Famer. The guy is a TNA Hall of Famer. Like, this guy is a legend, one of the greatest, part of the greatest tag team, one of the greatest tag teams of all time. I respect this guy's opinion. It doesn't mean I have to agree with him. Let me explain. So on Tuesday, TMZ did a special on Hulk Hogan, and Vince McMahon was involved in it. And so Bully Ray on his show Busted Open, after this aired, basically theorized and basically say, hey, I believe that the fans would want to see Vince McMahon show up in the final moments of John Cena's career. And I want to talk about that here for a second because, listen, I understand the notion that Vince McMahon, of why you could have an argument why Vince McMahon should be present for John Cena's last match. He's a big reason why John Cena even got a boost and became basically the modern day Hulk Hogan. Let's call it what it is. He basically is, in a lot of ways, the rapper, hat wearing, version wearing of Hulk Hogan. That's what he is. He told people, "You can't see me." Hulk Hogan said, "Say your prayers and eat your vitamins." Like, it's a lot of the same stuff, but in a different generation. There are also a lot of flaws. There are some flaws in John Cena, but there's also a lot more flaws in Hulk Hogan, as we saw with the complicated nature of how people were talking about his death and his passing. And the one thing that was very noticeable about Hogan's passing in tributes was Vince McMahon was not there. This was the first time that we have seen or heard from him in a long time and saw him comment on Hulk Hogan. He said in that TMZ special that he would have liked to have been there. The reality is he is on the banned list for TKO. You guys may not like TKO. One good thing that they did is this guy is in a lawsuit for sex trafficking. I don't care what that is. And I understand that they brought back Brock Lesnar and that may give them means or a reason to do that. I do not see Vince McMahon coming back. I don't think it's a good idea to have him come back. Do I think that some people would want to see him come back to support John Cena? Absolutely. Absolutely. I have respect for what Vince McMahon has done for the wrestling business. I understand his impact on the wrestling business, but he is a deplorable, wretched human being with a lot of wretched allegations and a lot of wretched things that are still needed to be sorted out in that lawsuit. So if you bring him back, that is going to be 10 times the blowback, maybe 100 times the blowback that you're getting for bringing back Brock Lesnar. There's no way in hell. Hell, I'll go and use a Vince McMahon trademark from his song. There is no chance in hell. Zero. Nada. Zip. There is no chance that Vince McMahon is at John Cena's last match. Zero. And I think it's a horrible idea. I respect Bully Ray. I respect what I respect, the platform that he has. I respect, the acumen and the mind and, the way that he thinks. He's a former wrestler. He's entitled to his opinion. I completely disagree with it. I understand why he would say people would want to see that, but I don't want to see it. I don't know about you guys. There's also this notion in the fan base that somehow WWE now would be better with Vince. I don't know what you guys are watching. I don't know. Like, John Cena is one of the great characters and one of the great moments of all time, or one of the great performers of all time. And he's created so many magical moments. I understand that maybe this might be something that John would want. Here's the problem with bringing in Vince McMahon. The conversation should be about John Cena and John Cena alone. This guy has had a near 25-year wrestling career that you could argue, depending on your era, could be the greatest of all time. I've watched this guy's entire career, from rapper to, the You Can't See Me and all this other stuff, and, the Fruity Pebble and all that other shit, like, all the colors coded shirts and merchandise, to being this accomplished Hollywood actor, to being the Peacemaker. He showed up on Jimmy Fallon in the Peacemaker getup. Like, John Cena's fucking great. I think he's one of the greatest entertainers maybe ever. And, I'm going to miss him, man. But if you bring in Vince McMahon for his last match, the attention immediately goes off of John Cena. And it becomes all about Vince McMahon, whether he wants it to be or not. Because that would be the first public appearance in WWE that we would see of Vince McMahon since he was ousted from the company back in 2022. He hasn't been on camera. I think, ironically, one of the last times we saw him physically in front of a WWE camera was when he introduced John Cena celebrating his 20 years in the company. Let me ask you guys this, you John Cena fans out there. Do you want that last moment to be about John Cena, or do you want it to be about Vince McMahon? I think instantly when he shows up and his face is on camera, it's immediately a bad thing. So if you want to hide him somewhere, fine. If you want to hide him in the building, put him backstage where it's not very publicly visible, fine. You can do that. I am not putting him in the front row. I am not putting him in the ring. I'm not having him cut a promo. I'm not having him do any of that. That is a horrible idea. Let's say magically in the next 4 months that this Janelle Grant lawsuit gets settled. I still don't want him near that, because the stank of that is still going to be there. And if it gets settled, that doesn't mean that he's not guilty of it. So, I'm not going to go down the nuts and bolts of that whole thing. But all of the stigma and all the negative press and all the sponsors that they had, like how much damage control that they had to do, and some of the damage control that they've had to do with Brock Lesnar, who is listed multiple times in the lawsuit but hasn't committed crime. Vince McMahon is suspected of crime. Sex trafficking is a serious, serious offense. And if you know how deplorable of a human being he was outside of that, you're not going to bring negative attention for John Cena's last match. So respectfully, Bully Ray, respectfully, Bubba Ray Dudley, however you know him as, I totally disagree with this sentiment. To me, it just doesn't add up at all. It doesn't benefit WWE. It doesn't benefit John Cena. It's all negatives across the board. I totally get the sentiment of why, but the ramifications of it just don't add up. So that's my thought on it. It's the same. It's really like, listen, and let's just put this here, like at the last point. If the other part of this is like, listen, you're gonna have him show up to John Cena's thing, but you're not gonna have him show up to Hulk Hogan's, memorial and that sort of stuff. Really? At least on WWE television? Really? That would be a bad look too. But that's like way farther down the list. This should all be about John Cena. And if you bring in Vince McMahon, it's all going to be about him, whether he wants the attention or not. And knowing Vince McMahon, he probably wants the attention. So, anyway, thanks so much, everybody, for watching. Appreciate the support. I'll see you guys. Bye-bye.